Thank you very much, Walter, and welcome everybody. We're glad to see you here tonight. If we think about medicine and the Holocaust at all, the name Joseph Mengele, MD, PhD, will probably come to mind. Mengele was known as the Angel of Death. At Auschwitz, the Nazis' main extermination camp, where more than 2 million Jews were gassed and cremated. We might consider Dr. Mengele's participation in the Holocaust as a medical aberration and view Mengele himself as an isolated medical madman. This assumption would, however, be a mistake, since the medical profession played a central role in planning and implementing the genocidal murder of more than 6 million Jews. If we wish to understand how a doctor with a PhD ends up making selections on a ramp in a concentration camp, we must begin with a consideration of eugenics, which literally means good birth. This term was coined by Francis Galton to build upon the theory of natural selection propounded by his cousin, Charles Darwin. Eugenics is defined, quote, as the science dealing with factors that influence the hereditary qualities of a race and with ways of improving these qualities, especially by modifying the fertility of different categories of people, end quote. Most of the developed world of the late 19th century and early 20th century embraced eugenics. Luminaries such as Teddy Roosevelt, Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, the presidents of Harvard and Stanford University, and Alexander Graham Bell supported eugenics. Harry Laughlin of the Eugenic Record Office at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory on Long Island was particularly influential in matters relating to immigration and sterilization. Indiana passed the first sterilization law in the world in 1907, and that was an involuntary sterilization law. Language from Laughlin's Model Sterilization Act was incorporated in Virginia's 1924 Eugenical Sterilization Act that was drafted with the intent of testing its constitutionality in the United States Supreme Court. In 1927, in Buck versus Bell, Chief Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, Jr., writing for the 8-to-1 majority upholding Virginia's eugenical sterilization law, ended his opinion with these words: 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Laughlin's greatest influence was in the passage of the Immigration Act of 1924, which was actually called the Immigration Restriction Act of 1924. It effectively ended immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe and prohibited immigration by East Asians and Asian Indians. England and the United States were not the only countries where scientists, physicians, and government officials embraced eugenics. While imprisoned in Lunsburg prison after his failed Munich beer hall putsch, Hitler was given a genetics textbook and incorporated genetics into Mein Kampf, writing, quote, "Whoever is not bodily and spiritually healthy and worthy shall not have the right to pass on his sufferings in the body of his children," end quote. His Nazi party promoted eugenics as the scientific basis for its anti-Semitism. Still, eugenics might have been a historical scientific footnote had Hitler not been elected chancellor in 1933, presented himself as, quote, the doctor to the German people, and implemented the Nazi philosophy of applied biology with the enthusiastic support of Germany's medical and scientific communities. Hitler enacted the sterilization law in 1933, and over the next 6 years, physicians sterilized 400,000 Germans with physical and mental disabilities. Patients were not selected for involuntary sterilization because of their race, religion, or gender, or orientation, sexual orientation, but simply to prevent the transmission of undesirable traits that were thought to be genetically transmitted. In defending this policy against detractors, Hitler often referred to the 13 countries that already had sterilization laws in place, including the United States. Hitler enacted the Nuremberg marital health laws of 1935, which required couples to submit to medical examinations before marriage at one of 700 Reich health offices to see if racial pollution might be involved. The Nuremberg laws were considered public health measures and were administered primarily by physicians who profited financially as instruments of racist Nazi policies. The laws were in fact modeled after America's Jim Crow laws. In May of 1939, Hitler implemented the concept of, quote, extermination of lives not worth living, when he instructed his personal physician, Karl Brandt, to appoint a committee to prepare for the secret mercy killings of deformed and retarded children. Jewish children were excluded from this program on the grounds that they did not deserve the merciful act of euthanasia. In October of 1939, Hitler issued a Führer decree, which read, quote, Reich leader Buhler and Dr. Brandt are charged with the responsibility for expanding the authority of physicians to be designated by name to the end that patients considered incurable according to the best available human judgment of their state of health can be granted a mercy death, end quote. These physicians and other medical personnel murdered approximately 5,000 children and 200,000 German adults. The killings occurred in 28 institutions, including some of Germany's most venerable hospitals. Hundreds, if not thousands, of physicians and other medical authorities administered the program. Physicians willingly killed patients with injections of poisons or by gassing with carbon monoxide. The head of the euthanasia program at Brandenburg Hospital emphasized that such killings should be carried out only by physicians, citing the motto, quote, the needle belongs in the hand of the doctor, end quote. Ultimately, physicians and scientists developed more efficient gas chambers and crematoria that were dismantled, replicated, and sent to the concentration camps, along with medical personnel proficient in their operation. I postulate that if German physicians and scientists were willing to sterilize and murder hundreds of thousands of their fellow citizens, we can easily understand how Joseph Mengele, MD, PhD, wound up making selections on the ramps of Auschwitz. American biomedical science is now the most advanced in the world. These circumstances are eerily similar to those of 100 years ago, when German biomedical science was the most advanced in the world. The rediscovery of Gregor Mendel's genetic research in 1900 provided a powerful scientific patina and intellectual respectability to eugenic policies in the highest circles of academic medicine, government, and philanthropy. In our own time, the Human Genome Project has revitalized a universal interest in biological determinism. The tools of the medical profession are more powerful and more dangerous than ever before. As central governments take more responsibility for the payment and the delivery of medical care, there will be even greater political demands for either a reduction in the cost of medical care or the rationing of medical care. When faced with conflicting pressures from their patients and from society, will future physicians defend the Hippocratic Oath or abandon it once again? It is our belief that the medical profession has not yet come to terms with this question and is, therefore, in danger of ignoring the medical ethical lessons of the past 150 years. Holocaust Museum Houston is therefore delighted to have our three distinguished Nobel laureates here tonight to share with you their thoughts on medical ethics and the Holocaust.